Welcome to This Week in Christian History, a podcast from the Center for Christian History at Mississippi College. The Center for Christian History is dedicated to expanding knowledge and understanding of Christian history. Our mission is to provide a scholarly, unbiased look at the events, figures, and movements that have shaped Christianity over the centuries. You can visit centerforchristianhistory.com for daily historical highlights. And each week on this podcast, we'll do a deep dive into key moments with Christian history's leading authorities. Our first historical highlight for the week is Miles Coverdale. Building off of the translation work of John Wycliffe in 1382 and martyr William Tyndale in 1536, Coverdale was responsible for the first complete printing of the first English translation of the Bible. He survived Queen Bloody Mary's murder of Protestants by escaping to Denmark. Coverdale died on January 20th, 1569. Our next historical highlight and the subject of our deep dive is the founding of the American Lutheran Publicity Bureau on January 21st, 1914. At the time, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod was called the German Evangelical Lutheran Church in Missouri, Ohio, and other states, and its congregations spoke German. The American Lutheran Publicity Bureau was founded to help the church body make the transition to speaking English. Our final historical highlight for the week is Anna Bartlett Warner. Reared across the street from the United States Military Academy at West Point, Warner grew up in an affluent family. However, her father lost his wealth in the Panic of 1837. Warner and her sister Susan wrote several children's novels and other books in order to make money for their family. Warner also wrote the quintessential children's hymn, Jesus Loves Me, which continues to make an impact generations after her death on January 22nd, 1915. Today in our deep dive, Nick Walters, founder and director of the Center for Christian History, talks with Martin Noland about the founding of the American Lutheran Publicity Bureau.
Hello and welcome back yet again to another episode of This Week in Christian History. And we are focused this week on January 21st, 1914. That gives us an idea to be able to talk about the American Lutheran Publicity Bureau that was founded. But really, that's our excuse to be able to talk much more about the Lutheran Church, particularly the Missouri Synod, and what that is and what that's about and how it got created and how it got developed. And we're very glad to have Dr. Martin Noland with us here, who is a church historian by his education training. He also is a parish pastor and has had a long history of working in and out of the Lutheran Church in the Missouri Synod. And so, Dr. Noland, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us, if I wanted to talk about when Lutheranism or Lutheranism, or whichever way we might, or being a Lutheran, really kind of kicked off in America, was there any particular time that really you could go back to, this was the boat and this is when they came over and this is how it happened, or did it just evolve over a period of time? Some of both?
It's a long story, and we won't get into all those details.
Okay.
But it does start 1638. So what is that? That's like 20 years after Jamestown, more or less, 20 or 30
the
years.
Mayflower 1620. So right.
There you go. So 1638, the immigrants are Swedes. So if you remember the guy in The Muppets, who was the Swedish cook,
sure,
that might put an image, a bunch of guys, not a bunch of Vikings, but a bunch of Swedes,
yes,
who love to eat herring and everything else. They are on the boat, I think it's called the Kalmar Nickel, and they landed in Delaware Bay, 1638, and they started a town near, what's the name of that? Starts with a W.
Wilmington.
That's it. It's right near there, south of what became Philadelphia. And they started a colony of Swedish Lutherans If they didn't immediately have a pastor, they got one as soon as they could. They tried to do some missionary work with Indians, and that was the start of Lutheranism in what became the United States. So Delaware gets first choice. They have a couple of churches that are called the Old Swedes Church in around Wilmington. So they claim first time. Then after that, there is a couple of immigrants that go up the Hudson River, and they get some pastors up there. Most of those are from Germany. Then also into Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, because it was a more tolerant colony, most of the colonies were British, they were Anglican, or maybe up north they were Baptist or Puritan, I should say. Baptist was only Rhode Island. And, the Lutherans, a lot of the other Protestants thought the Lutherans were Catholics, and they still kind of think that today. What's this thing? What's this collar? They walk into the church and it looks like a Catholic church. So the Lutherans found that they had more access, more tolerance in the colony of Pennsylvania, where there was a bunch of other groups that didn't fit, like the Quakers and the Pennsylvania Dutch and the Amish and the Mennonites and everything else. So the Pennsylvania group, or I should say the churches there, they grew. A lot of Lutherans felt comfortable in Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia area, and it was there that we first had kind of an organization called the Pennsylvania Ministerium. And the pastor in charge of that was named Muhlenberg. And this is the beginning of the 18th century, so before the Revolutionary War. And in fact, Muhlenberg's son, there's a very famous story where he got into the pulpit because he was the preacher.
Right.
And he started to preach about things, and then he ripped off his vestments, that is the pastor clothes, and underneath he had a Revolutionary War uniform. And he tromped out of church and said, "I'm fighting for the Revs, the Revolutionary War, the American side, not the Brits."
He's one of the two statues in Statuary Hall in the U.S. Capitol that Pennsylvania has put up to the. I think even though he maybe was a pastor, his pastorate was maybe in Virginia or somewhere else, but he nonetheless was from there, and I think, and his brother was involved in the early the Continental Congress as well, maybe speaker or something like that too. So yes, okay.
So the Lutherans go back before the Revolutionary War, and they made their mark in a little way. They're always outnumbered by the Brits and the Anglos and all that. But so that's where all that gets started. And today the historians talk about them as the East Coast Lutherans, because as the immigrants came over from Germany mostly, but from other places where the Lutherans were. I mean, a lot of people don't know, but Lutherans dominate in Germany, but they also are in Scandinavia. All of the Scandinavian countries are officially Lutheran. So Norway and Sweden and Denmark and Finland and maybe a few other of the small ones, the Baltics, they're all Lutherans. And so when they came over, they brought their Lutheranism with them too. And so as Lutherans immigrated to the United States, they brought their ethnic connection with them. So the Swedes started their own Swedish Lutheran Church. The Danes did that, and sometimes they worked together, sometimes they split. So that's all the background of Lutheranism in the United States. And it isn't my group that I am a pastor of. We didn't get started till 1830, 200 years after the Kalmar nickel ended up in Delaware Bay.
Wow.
So you already had an established group of Lutherans. They had already accommodated. They know how to do the Christian thing and the American thing at the same time, because, and this maybe not everybody realizes, maybe they've heard of it, but in Europe, all the churches were state churches.
Sure.
And those that did not cooperate with the state church and they tried to build their own church, they were kicked out. It was considered sedition or treason. So when the Lutherans moved to the United States, some of them did for a variety of reasons, but when they're setting up the church, they said, well, can we tax our people? No, you can't. Wait, well, where are we gonna get the money to build a church and all that? Well, they had to figure out how to do the church thing in the United States.
Wow.
So it took 200 years, but they figured it out pretty quick. Otherwise, they wouldn't have survived. A lot of the Lutherans gave up when they immigrated. They said, it's too hard. We'll just join the Anglicans, because the Anglicans look and feel and sound, except for the English language, they sound like Lutherans. And there's a lot of similarities. That goes back to the history of Anglicanism. Thomas Cranmer was pretty close to being Lutheran, and then how that all changed. Now, the thing that you brought up, the American Lutheran Publicity Bureau is celebrating today its anniversary. This is their book, up to 2014. Richard Johnson is the author. You see a bunch of pictures of people that were involved with that bureau. So what was that group? Well, really very briefly, they were a group at the time in 1914. Think about what's the big thing going on worldwide in 1914. World War I, right. Who was the enemy? Maybe not in 1914, but by 1916. The Germans, right?
Germans, right, and the Austrians, and right.
Yes, and well, guess what? My synod, that's the church body. We use the word synod to refer to the church body. My synod was still officially called the evangelical. Well, I won't do it in English, but it's the Evangelical Lutheran Church, the German Evangelical Lutheran Church of Missouri, Ohio, and other states.
Wow.
Germans they like long sentences. They like long words. They put words together, compound words. It could be a mile long, and then it's one word and it tells you something. So anyway, so we were German in 1914.
Wow.
And they were still speaking German in all the congregations. They were worshiping in German, and the conventions, everything was in German. Well, then World War I happened. So what are you going to do? My grandmother's pastor here in San Francisco said, we're going to start speaking English. Well, my grandmother's father was a German and English teacher, and he wasn't very happy about that. Didn't have a choice, because otherwise, if you spoke German, they thought you were in favor of the Kaiser, right? Not a good thing. You were seditious, traitor. So in my grandmother grew up in a house where you could only speak German in the house, outside English. But so this is why this organization got together, basically. 1914, they see Germany is going to become the enemy of the United States. And they say, we have to help our church body make the transition, because the other Lutherans had already done this. But we were still speaking German. And that's why today is an important thing in the Americanization of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. We don't even have the German name in there. I have a lot of people that are pastors and laymen. They have no idea what German is, even if I speak it to them.
Wow.
So we were originally very definitely an ethnic church in every way. And thanks to this group, we made the transition successfully. It wasn't an easy thing. Now, I want to show you an excellent book that I want to recommend. If you want to know, this is the book today.
Okay.
Mark Granquist is the author. I think I'm not sure where he teaches. He was at Luther Seminary in St. Paul when this was published. But it's called Lutherans in America, A New History. And it covers the whole thing from 1638 to the most recent times. This is probably 2012 or something like that. Fortress Press. It's really good.
And is that just for the Missouri Synod, or is that
no, it's
Lutherans,
for all
period?
Lutherans
Okay.
in the United States. And it does an excellent job. So I highly recommend, if your audience is interested, that's the one book to go to. It covers all the other textbooks we've ever published as Lutherans.
You can watch the rest of Nick's interview with Martin Noland by clicking the View Full Interviews button on the podcast page of centerforchristianhistory.com. This Week in Christian History is produced for the Center for Christian History by Blue and Gold Media at Mississippi College in cooperation with the MC Department of Communication. For episode transcripts and more information, visit centerforchristianhistory.com. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and follow the Center for Christian History on Facebook and Instagram. Our next podcast episode is coming next week. Thank you for listening.